Emma, honey, we need to talk about the sleeping arrangements, my mother said, her voice carrying that familiar tone of forced sweetness that always preceded bad news. I looked up from my laptop where I'd been reviewing work contracts, already knowing that whatever came next wouldn't be good. My name is Emma Warner, and at 29, I've spent the last 5 years keeping our family afloat. Working as a corporate attorney wasn't my dream job, but the steady income meant I could cover the mortgage, utilities, and expenses for our family home after Dad passed away. What I didn't expect was for my sacrifices to be treated as an obligation rather than a choice. What about them? I asked, though I already knew where this conversation was heading. My sister Olivia sat next to Mom on the couch, bouncing her youngest on her knee, while her other two kids played loudly in what used to be my home office. Well, Mom continued, wringing her hands, with the kids getting bigger, they really need more space. We were thinking your bedroom would make a perfect playroom, and you could move your things to the garage. We can fix it up nice and cozy. I stared at them, momentarily speechless. The garage. They wanted me to move to the garage so my sister's kids could have a playroom. Never mind that I converted the garage into my office last year when Olivia first moved in with her 3 kids, claiming her divorce left her with nowhere else to go. The garage, I repeated flatly. You want me to move to the garage of the house I've been paying for since Dad died? Don't be dramatic, Emma, Olivia chimed in, rolling her eyes. You're barely home anyway with all the hours you work. And the kids need the space. They're growing. Yes, they were growing. Growing louder, more demanding, and apparently more entitled to my space with each passing month. I thought about the last 5 years, the 80-hour work weeks, the missed vacations, the relationships I put on hold, all to keep this roof over our heads after Dad's unexpected heart attack left us with a mountain of medical debt. I turned the garage into my office. I reminded them, where exactly am I supposed to work? Oh, you can work at the kitchen table, Mom suggested brightly, as if this solved everything. Or maybe the basement. We just need to think about what's best for the family. The family. It was always about what was best for the family, specifically, what was best for Olivia and her kids. When she moved in temporarily last year, it was for the family. When she quit her part-time job because childcare was too expensive, that was for the family too. Somehow, my role in the family had become that of the silent provider, expected to work harder and sacrifice more while asking for nothing in return. I closed my laptop slowly, buying time to control my rising anger. And where will I sleep? The basement floods every time it rains. We'll figure something out, Olivia said dismissively, not even looking up from her phone. Maybe you could finally find a husband with a nice house. She laughed at her own joke, and Mom smiled indulgently. That was the moment something inside me snapped. Not violently, not dramatically, but with the quiet certainty of someone who had finally had enough. I stood up, gathering my things with deliberate calm. I have a meeting with the family lawyer tomorrow, I said, my voice steady. I think it's time we discuss some changes. Mom's smile faltered. Lawyer? What lawyer? Emma, don't be ridiculous. We're just trying to make things work for everyone. Everyone except me, I replied. Check the mailbox tomorrow. You'll both want to read what's coming. As I walked upstairs to my room, not the future playroom, I could hear them whispering urgently behind me. Let them whisper. What they didn't know was that 6 months ago, when Olivia first started hinting about needing more space, I'd taken steps to protect myself. The house they so casually wanted to rearrange, I'd bought it from Mom 3 months ago, using my savings and a private mortgage. Mom had been eager to sell, wanting to clear Dad's remaining medical debts, and I'd made sure the deal was more than fair. The paperwork had been finalized last week, and the official notice was being delivered tomorrow. I hadn't planned to tell them this way. I'd wanted to wait to find the right moment to explain that I'd secured our home, that no one would have to worry about losing it. But their casual disregard for my contributions, their assumption that I would just accept being pushed aside yet again, it was too much. Sitting on my bed, I pulled out my phone and texted Michael, the family lawyer who had helped me with the purchase. They want me to move to the garage. Time to send those papers. His response was immediate. Documents will be delivered by certified mail tomorrow morning. Are you sure you're ready for this? Was I ready? I thought about the last year, about Olivia showing up with her kids and mountains of designer luggage, about Mom rearranging the house to accommodate them without once asking my opinion, about the steady erosion of my space and privacy. I thought about the family dinner last week, and Olivia had complained about her room being too small while I silently calculated the bills in my head. About Mom suggesting I take on extra work to help with the kids' private school tuition. About the constant assumption that because I was single, my needs came last. Yes, I texted back. I'm ready. The next morning, I left for work early, not wanting to be there when the certified letter arrived. My phone started buzzing before I even reached the office. What is this? Mom's voice was shrill when I finally answered. Some kind of joke. Not a joke, I replied calmly. I bought the house 3 months ago. You signed the papers, remember? Such a relief to get out from under those medical bills, you said. But I didn't think, you can't just. Can't just what, Mom? Can't make decisions about my own property, like deciding who lives where. There was a long silence before I heard Olivia in the background, her voice rising with indignation. I waited. Emma, Mom finally said, her voice smaller now. We need to talk about this. Yes, we do. I'll be home at 7. We can discuss the new arrangements then. I hung up and turned my phone to silent, focusing on the contracts on my desk. For the first time in years, I felt in control. It wasn't about revenge or punishment. It was about finally standing up for myself, about demanding the respect I had earned. The house had cost me nearly everything I'd saved, but as I thought about the coming confrontation, I knew it was worth it. Sometimes you have to lose something to gain something more valuable, self-respect. The day passed in a blur of meetings and phone calls, but by 6:30, I couldn't focus anymore. I packed up my things and headed home, ready to face whatever waited for me there. As I pulled into the driveway, I noticed unfamiliar cars parked outside. Great. Mom had called in reinforcements, probably Aunt Sarah and Uncle Jim, her go-to allies in family disputes. But this time, their presence wouldn't change anything. I walked in to find exactly what I expected. A family intervention. Mom, Olivia, Aunt Sarah, and Uncle Jim sat in the living room, their faces a mix of concern and disapproval. The kids were nowhere to be seen, probably sent to a neighbor's house for this family summit. Emma, Aunt Sarah started, using her mediator voice, your mother tells me you've done something very unexpected. I set my briefcase down and took off my coat, taking my time before responding. You mean legally purchasing this house to ensure our family home stays in the family? Yes, I did. But why go behind everyone's back? Uncle Jim demanded. That's not how family handles things. I laughed. I couldn't help it. Really? Like how no one consulted me before Olivia moved in. Or before my office became a playroom. Or before deciding I should live in the garage. That's different. Olivia protested. I needed help. I have kids. Yes, you do, I agreed. And I've been helping. I've paid every bill, covered every expense, worked overtime to keep this roof over our heads. But apparently, that's not enough. I'm still expected to give up my space, my privacy, my comfort, all while being told I'm selfish for wanting basic consideration. Mom started to cry, right on cue. But for once, her tears didn't make me back down. The house is mine now, I continued. I have the deed, I have the mortgage, and I have plans. Starting next month, things are going to change. You can't throw us out. Olivia burst out. Where will we go? I'm not throwing anyone out, I said calmly. But there will be rules, and rent. The room erupted in protests, but I held up my hand. This isn't a negotiation. I've already drawn up the lease agreements. You can either sign them and stay, or find somewhere else to live. Your choice. I pulled the documents from my briefcase, 2 separate leases, one for Mom and one for Olivia. I'd spent weeks working on them with Michael, making sure they were fair but firm. 3 bedrooms for you and the kids, I told Olivia, sliding her lease across the coffee table. Reasonable rent, utilities included. No more last-minute room rearrangements, no more takeovers of shared spaces. And me, Mom asked quietly. The master suite remains yours, I said, handing her the second lease. Same arrangement, fair rent, utilities included. We all stay in our designated spaces, we all contribute to the household, we all respect each other's boundaries. But Emma, Aunt Sarah interjected, surely there's a better way to handle this. Without all these legal documents, I turned to her, feeling calmer than I had in months. There was. We could have handled this like a real family with mutual respect and consideration, but that's not what happened. So now we do it my way. The room fell silent as they looked at the leases. I could see them processing what this meant, the shift in power, the end of taking me for granted. You have until the end of the week to decide, I said, picking up my briefcase. I'll be in my room, not the future playroom, if anyone wants to discuss this rationally. As I headed upstairs, I heard Uncle Jim mutter something about family loyalty. But I didn't turn back. Sometimes loyalty means having the courage to change a toxic situation, even if it makes you temporarily unpopular. In my room, I sat at my desk and opened my laptop, trying to focus on work while the murmur of voices drifted up from below. After about an hour, there was a soft knock at my door. "Come in," I called, already knowing who it would be. Mom entered, looking older and more uncertain than I'd seen her since Dad died. She sat on the edge of my bed, smoothing the comforter with trembling hands. "I've been thinking," she said quietly, "about everything you've done for us these past few years. I don't think I ever really saw it before." I turned to face her, waiting. "When did I stop seeing you, Emma? When did I start taking you for granted?" The question hung in the air between us, heavy with years of unspoken hurt. But for the first time, I felt hope that maybe, just maybe, things could change for the better. The next morning, the house was unusually quiet. Mom had signed her lease before going to bed, her hands shaking but her voice steady as she admitted she'd lost sight of what mattered. Olivia, on the other hand, had stormed out with the kids, declaring she needed time to think. I sat at the kitchen table, sipping my coffee and reviewing work emails when Mom joined me. She looked tired, like she had barely slept. "Olivia called," she said, pouring herself a cup. "She's at her friend Jessica's house. She says she needs space to process everything." I nodded, keeping my eyes on my laptop screen. "She has until the end of the week to decide." "Emma," Mom started, then paused. "I spent most of the night thinking about what you said, about taking you for granted, about not seeing you." I looked up, meeting her gaze. "And? You were right. After your father died, I was so lost in my own grief that I stopped being a mother to you. I let you carry everything, the bills, the responsibility, the emotional burden. Then when Olivia came back, she trailed off. You focused all your attention on her, just like always." I finished. Mom flinched but didn't deny it. She seemed so broken after the divorce. "And the kids. I guess I thought you were strong enough to handle everything on your own. I didn't realize how unfair that was." Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with a text from Olivia. "This is cruel, and you know it. Mom needs me here. The kids need stability." I showed the message to Mom, who sighed heavily. "She still doesn't get it, does she?" "No," I replied, typing out a response. "The house is stable. The terms are fair. Your choice." The rest of the week passed in a strange limbo. Olivia came by each day to collect more clothes or toys for the kids, each time making pointed comments about family loyalty and my selfishness. But I noticed she was also slowly packing up their things, preparing for whatever decision she would make. On Thursday evening, 2 days before the deadline, she finally asked to talk. We sat in the living room, the space between us heavy with unspoken words. "I can't afford the rent," she said finally. "Not on my salary." "You don't have a salary," I pointed out. "You quit your job." She flushed. "Because childcare was too expensive. And now you live rent-free while I work overtime to support everyone. How is that fair?" "It's not about fair," she snapped. "It's about family, about helping each other." I leaned forward, meeting her eyes. "You're right. It is about family, about respecting each other, supporting each other, not taking advantage. I've helped for years, Olivia. I've given everything I have. But it can't be one-sided anymore." She looked away, tears forming in her eyes. "So what am I supposed to do?" "Sign the lease. Get a job. There's an opening in my firm's HR department. I already talked to them about you. The salary would cover your rent and expenses, and they have on-site childcare." Her head snapped up. You found me a job." "I found you an opportunity," I corrected. "What you do with it is up to you." She was quiet for a long time, fidgeting with the hem of her shirt. Finally, she spoke in a small voice that reminded me of when we were kids. "I'm scared, Emma. I'm scared of failing, of not being enough." For the first time in years, I saw my sister instead of just her demands. "I know, but you're not alone. We can do this together, as a real family, supporting each other equally." The next day, Olivia signed the lease and submitted her application to my firm. Mom cried when we told her, but this time there were different tears: relief, hope, maybe even a little pride. That weekend, we all worked together to rearrange the house properly. My office went back to being my office. The kids got organized spaces for their toys and studies. We set up a chore chart and a family calendar to track everyone's responsibilities and commitments. As we worked, Mom pulled me aside during a break. "I found these while cleaning," she said, holding out a stack of old photos. They showed me and Olivia as kids, playing together, laughing, being sisters before life complicated everything. "We used to be so close," she said softly. "What happened?" I looked at the photos, remembering those simpler times. We grew up, made choices, forgot how to be family without keeping score. "Can we fix it?" I watched Olivia showing her oldest how to properly organize his books, teaching responsibility instead of expecting others to handle everything. I think we already started. The transformation wasn't instant or easy. There were still arguments about noise levels, shared spaces, and responsibilities. Olivia struggled with the transition back to work, sometimes falling back into old patterns of expecting me to handle everything. But now there was a framework for addressing these issues, boundaries that everyone had agreed to respect. 1 month into our new arrangement, I came home to find dinner on the table, a full family meal, prepared by Mom and Olivia together. "We wanted to thank you," Mom said as I stood in the doorway surprised, "not just for keeping us together, but for forcing us to be better." Olivia nodded, looking more like her old self in her work clothes, standing straighter with new confidence. "We were taking advantage of you, treating you like an ATM instead of family. I'm sorry, Emma, really sorry." As we sat down to eat together, I realized something had shifted. The house felt different, not just because of the physical changes, but because the emotional atmosphere had transformed. We were finally becoming the family we should have been all along. That night, as I got ready for bed in my room, not the garage, I found a note slipped under my door. In Olivia's handwriting it read, "Thank you for not giving up on us, even when we gave you every reason to. Love, your little sister, who's finally growing up." I smiled, pinning it to my bulletin board next to the deed to our house. Sometimes, the hardest boundaries to set are the ones that ultimately bring us closer together. 3 months into our new living arrangement, the real test came when Aunt Sarah decided to pay us another visit. She arrived unannounced on a Sunday afternoon, probably expecting to find chaos and resentment. Instead, she walked into family game night. "Well, this is unexpected," she said, standing in the doorway as we sat around the dining table, playing Monopoly with the kids. "Pull up a chair," I offered, watching her take in the scene, Olivia in her work clothes, having just returned from a weekend shift at the firm. Mom helping the youngest with his moves, and me, for once, relaxing instead of hiding behind a laptop. "I wanted to see how everyone was coping," Aunt Sarah said, her tone suggesting she'd expected to find us barely speaking to each other. "We're doing great," Olivia replied, rolling the dice. Emma's rules turned out to be exactly what we all needed. Aunt Sarah's eyebrows shot up. "Really? Last time I was here, you were saying something quite different." "People change," Mom interjected, her voice firm. "Sometimes it takes a wake-up call to realize what really matters." The conversation was interrupted by excited squeals as Olivia's oldest landed on boardwalk and started negotiating with his brother for ownership. I watched Aunt Sarah observe our interactions, noting how her expression shifted from skepticism to surprise. Later, after the kids were in bed, Aunt Sarah pulled me aside into the kitchen. "I owe you an apology," she said quietly. "I thought you were being harsh, but I see now what you were trying to do." I nodded, filling the kettle for tea. It wasn't about being harsh. It was about creating structure, helping everyone stand on their own feet. "Your mother seems different," she observed. "More like her old self." "She is. We all are." I handed her a cup of tea. Sometimes you have to break old patterns to build something better. That night, after Aunt Sarah left, Olivia joined me on the back porch. The autumn air was crisp, and we wrapped ourselves in blankets like we used to do as kids. "Remember when we used to sit out here with Dad?" she asked, staring at the stars. He'd tell us stories about constellations and make up ridiculous names for the ones he couldn't remember. I smiled at the memory. "The great spatula," I recalled, because he said it looked like Mom's favorite cooking utensil. We laughed together, and for a moment it felt like old times. Then Olivia turned serious. I was so angry when you bought the house, she admitted. Not just because of the rules, but because it felt like you were trying to control everything. But now I see you were just trying to save us, from ourselves, from our worst habits. I never wanted control, I said softly. I just wanted respect, recognition, to not be taken for granted. She reached over and squeezed my hand. You got it. All of it. You know what Jessica said to me the other day? She said I'm like a different person now. Stronger, more independent. You always were strong, I told her. You just got comfortable letting others carry your weight. The next morning, I found Mom in the kitchen before work, making breakfast for everyone. Something she'd started doing regularly since our new arrangement began. Aunt Sarah called, she said, flipping pancakes. She's been telling everyone about our miraculous transformation. Apparently, we're the talk of the family. I rolled my eyes, grabbing a coffee mug. Of course we are. But you know what's really miraculous? Mom continued, her voice softening. Watching both my daughters become the women I always hoped you'd be. Strong, independent, supporting each other instead of competing. She placed a plate of pancakes in front of me, then sat down with her own coffee. I was wrong before, Emma. About so many things. But mostly about thinking that loving you both equally meant treating you the same. You needed different things from me, and I failed to see that. Mom, I started, but she held up her hand. Let me finish. What you did, buying the house, setting boundaries, it wasn't just about saving our home. It was about saving our family, and I'm so proud of you for having the courage to do it. That evening, I sat in my office, my real office, not the garage, reviewing the household accounts. Everything was in order. Rent paid on time, bills current, savings growing. But the real success wasn't in the numbers. It was in the sound of Olivia's kids doing homework at the kitchen table, with their mother helping instead of making excuses. It was in Mom's renewed energy, her rediscovery of old hobbies and interests now that she wasn't consumed with enabling bad habits. It was in the weekly family dinners that had become a true celebration of being together, not an obligation or a chance to air grievances. We weren't perfect. There were still disagreements, moments of tension, old habits trying to resurface. But now we had tools to handle them, boundaries to guide us, and a shared commitment to making things work. As I closed my laptop and headed to bed, I passed the family photos Mom had recently rearranged on the wall. Among them was a new addition, a picture of all of us from last weekend, laughing and covered in flour from an attempted baking session. Looking at our smiling faces, I realized that sometimes the hardest choices lead to the best outcomes. We had lost our old dynamic, but in its place, we had built something stronger, healthier, and infinitely more valuable. True family, the kind that supports without suffocating, loves without enabling, and grows together instead of apart. 1 year after I bought the house, we gathered in the backyard for a celebration, not just of the anniversary but of everything we'd accomplished together. Olivia had recently been promoted at work, her natural people skills finally being put to good use in HR. Her kids were thriving in their stable environment with clear boundaries and consistent expectations. Mom had started teaching art classes at the community center, rediscovering her passion for painting, something she had set aside years ago. As for me, I finally had time to breathe, to focus on my own life instead of constantly managing everyone else's. Speech, Mom called out, raising her glass as we sat around the patio table. The setting sun cast a warm glow over our gathering, and the autumn air was crisp with possibility. I stood feeling slightly awkward. I'm not sure what to say. How about the truth? Olivia suggested, bouncing her youngest on her knee, about how you saved us all by being tough enough to say no. I looked around at my family, really looked at them. At Mom, who had found her spark again. At Olivia, who had grown into the strong, independent woman she was always meant to be. At the kids, secure and happy in their stable home. A year ago, I began. I thought I was just buying a house, just protecting my investment and claiming my space. But it was never really about the house, was it? Mom shook her head, tears glistening in her eyes. It was about respect. I continued. About learning to be a real family, not just people who share DNA and a roof. About growing up and taking responsibility for our own lives. And about learning when to help and when to step back, Mom added softly. Exactly. I raised my glass. So here's to boundaries that brought us closer, to changes that made us stronger, and to the family we've become. To family, everyone echoed, clinking glasses. Later that evening, as we cleaned up together, another change, responsibilities now shared, Olivia pulled me aside. "Remember when I said you were being cruel?" she asked, drying a dish, "making me get a job, pay rent, stand on my own feet." I nodded, putting away the leftovers. "It was the kindest thing anyone's ever done for me," she said quietly. "You believed I could be more than just a divorced mom living off her sister's generosity. You made me believe it too." Mom came in from the patio, overhearing the end of our conversation. "You did that for all of us, Emma. You didn't just save the house. You saved our dignity, our self-respect." I felt my throat tighten with emotion. "We did it together," I managed. "But you started it," Olivia insisted. "When everyone else was enabling my worst behavior, you dared to say no, to demand better." Mom picked up a family photo from the counter, one taken recently at Olivia's promotion party. "Look at us now," she said. "Who would have thought being told to pay rent would lead to all this?" We laughed together, the sound echoing through the kitchen that had become the heart of our renewed family bond. That night, as I got ready for bed, I found an envelope slipped under my door. Inside was a card signed by everyone, including the kids' messy scrawls. But it was the message inside that brought tears to my eyes. "Dear Emma, a year ago, you chose the harder path. You risked our anger, our rejection, our misunderstanding because you knew we deserved better than what we'd become. Thank you for loving us enough to demand more from us. Thank you for showing us what real family means. Love, your grateful family." I pinned it next to the house deed on my bulletin board, beside Olivia's note from a year ago. Together, they told the story of our transformation, from a broken family taking advantage of each other to a strong unit supporting each other's growth. Sometimes the best endings don't look anything like what you imagined. Sometimes they're better, richer, and more real than the fairy tale version. Our story wasn't about a perfect family, but about imperfect people learning to love each other better, to support without enabling, to care without controlling. And as I fell asleep that night in my own room, in my own house, filled with my thriving family, I knew we'd found something more valuable than any property deed could convey. We'd found our way back to being a real family, stronger and closer than ever before.